Okay, we have covered what is a cubic graph. Now next we'll go on to a reciprocal graph. Okay, a reciprocal graph is in the form of y equals to a over x. Okay, where a is supposed to be a number, a real number, and is supposed to be a real number. Okay, and a is not equals to 0. In other words, we cannot have a graph of y equals to 0 over x, because this would just means that y equals to 0, which also means that our graph would look like this. For example, if a is equals to 1, our graph would be y equals to 1 over x. Okay, now to draw this reciprocal graph, okay, it will look something like this. Okay, we have a curve over here, and then it note that it extends from infinity to infinity, and on this side we have from negative infinity to negative infinity as well. So this is the reciprocal graph of y equals to 1 over x. So take note that the graph never touches the axis, although as it extends to infinity, it will be closer and closer and closer and closer to the axis, but it will never touch the axis. Okay, it will go on till it's closer and closer and closer to the axis, but it will never touch the axis. So this is how a reciprocal graph will look like. So do you know why it will never touch the axis? Okay, if it touches the axis, it will mean that x, okay, will be 0, right? X will be 0. Okay, but if x is 0, y will be 1 over 0. And what's 1 over 0? Yes, it will be infinity. Okay, so thus at x equals 0, okay, y at x equals 0, y will be infinity. Okay, all the way up here. Okay, which means the graph will actually never touch the axis, since at y equals 0, y is at x equals to 0, y will be stretching to infinity. So this is the similar case when y is 0. Okay, because when y is 0, it will mean 1 over x equals to 0, and thus x will be, if we multiply, x would actually be 1 over 0, and which means infinity as well. Okay, so suppose we have the graph y equals to 6 over x. We know that this will be a reciprocal graph. Okay, a reciprocal graph. And suppose we are given that x equals to 1.5. Okay, what would be the value of y? To find out the value of y, it will just be as per any equation. We just substitute x equals to 1.5. Thus we get what? Y equals to 6 divided by 1.5 to be 4. And thus the coordinate would be 1.5 and 4. Okay, so suppose we have the case where when y is equals to 8, so what would be the value of x? Okay, again, it would be to substitute y equals to 8 into the equation. It would be 8 equals to 6 over x, and multiplying x, and we bring over x to the top and bring 8 back down, we simply get x equals to 6 over 8, and which would be 3/4, and thus the coordinate would be 3/4 and 8, or 0.75 and 8. Now we're going to talk about another kind of reciprocal graph that is very similar to what we have shown just now. We've talked about the reciprocal graph a over x. Now, what if we have a over x squared instead? Okay, what would be the graph and how would it look like? Okay, it will look something like this. Previously, we have a over x to be like this, right? Okay, now a over x squared, okay, you can tell that this graph will always be positive, since whatever negative number is squared, it will give you a positive number. Thus, a over x squared would simply look like this. That means this whole portion would just be inverted upwards, and this would remain where it is. That is to say, we will not have this graph any longer. Okay, I'm sorry, it should extend and never touch the axis. It will go all the way like this. Alright, this is the graph y equal a over x squared. Both sides will be positive, since if we have a negative number, a negative number squared by a squared will be a positive number. Okay, suppose I have x equals to minus 2, right? X squared will be minus 2 squared will be 4. Okay, it will be positive. It's a positive number. Thus, x will all be lying on y. The y value will be positive. Okay, similar to the previous graph, our graph will extends to infinity. Okay, it will get closer and closer to the axis, but again, it will never touch the axis.